Devon's switch from cupping to rising when it comes to the execution of pronation has generated great success for him. He was the one who would trade everything just for slight containment, and now he doesn't even hold on to anyone. His riser is solid. He protects it by opening his elbow angle rather than dumping his wrist. Rising is not as simple as just having a muscle solely dedicated to just rising, but instead, it's a cooperative effort by your extensor and flexor carpi radialis to cancel each other out so that you simply radially deviate. But just training rising will increase your body's ability to use it and efficiency on the table. The patterns of firing the neurons for radial deviation are very different from just straight flexion extension, otherwise we couldn't do both ulnar and radial. The neural aspect of neuromuscular strength is not trivial, and riser training targets it specifically. Riser training also alters the patterns of tension in the soft tissue, leading to differential adaptation due to different strain directions. So obviously, training riser implies physiological and neural benefits. Devon trains perfectly for his opponent, which is what affects his training goals. When Devon was training for opponent with a weaker cup, he would do riser over the knuckle. When he was prepping for Levin, he trained with wrist back with pressure that he intends to hit Levin with. Kickback pronation, riser behind the knuckle, not over. These will replicate the pressure of having your cup attacked. So to boil this down, train the style you are intending to arm wrestle someone in. If you lack a goal opponent to prepare for, train for whatever style you find the best for you. Shifting the attention to the riser has been the single biggest game changer for Devon in competition or training. Those who say it's a waste of time training it have no idea. It's so easy to train. These are all static lifts through the hand, so they're pretty much the only exercises that can show this kind of progress in an advanced athlete. Devon has changed how he does his riser lifts slightly. He moved the belt down just short of the knuckle. You can't replicate positions from arm wrestling. You want to replicate the vectors of the force. Having it 90 is the hardest variation of this lift, but in my opinion it's not the best. Best is maybe 75 degrees. So the pressure is more on the wrist and less on the biceps. Even Devon's lifts are not exactly parallel now. Anatomically speaking, there's no specific muscles responsible for rising. Radial deviation is a result of the wrist flexors and wrist extensors muscles working to cancel each other out, resulting in the wrist flicking up. You get enough flexion and extension from regular training. Training riser as a lift is useful for training the body to use the riser during arm wrestling, even if the same muscles are worked by wrist curls and wrist extension. It's a neurological benefit if nothing else. Strength training is absolutely a part of arm wrestling, and occasionally going to 1 rep max is part of strength training. In powerlifting you have squats, deadlift, and bench press. Each exercise employs a combination of muscles. You don't become a better powerlifter by doing isolation exercises needed for those lifts. You do squats, deadlift, and bench press. They still supplement isolation exercises for various benefits, but the main lifts are still the best way to get stronger for powerlifting. Likewise, in arm wrestling, it's a good idea to do things that are closer to how you engage on the table. So training riser directly is a good way to get stronger in that department. The force doesn't come from the wrist, it is transferred through it. I don't care how strong your biceps of brachialis or lat are, if you're posting and have no wrist rise, your hand will buckle and you'll soon be left with very few options. Basically, the ability to rise will allow you to out-regrip your opponent in the hook too, and possibly even reverse the match out into a top roll if you get enough of a leverage advantage. Generally though, riser is not a critical strength for hooking. When you're gripped up with someone and they're as high as legally allowed, not grabbing down by your wrist, your back pressure will be limited to what you can pull through your hand. If you have 150 pounds of back pressure on the thumb, wrist or lower hand, but only 50 on your wrist riser, then you aren't going to be able to post worth a damn against a good puller and your hand will always buckle underneath. If never having the high hand is okay with you, then keep on not training the riser. It's not just keeping your knuckles high in the setup, it's also being able to rise, climb, keep or even change your grip height, your knuckle angle and hand angles, and have a much more direct vector into someone's fingers. And even over their hand, combined with strong cup and back pressure during the match. It's a very important strength in the whole chain, and it's the strength that keeps you from being the one holding on. Look at the first round and then look at the second round against Levin. In the first one, it was actually because of Devon's rising being relatively close, and that was actually what allowed Devon to use his pronation more effectively to get the stop. Now look at the second round. Devon loses the rising battle right at the ready go, and because of that he was beaten easily by the Georgian Hulk. He's always an exception. None of Devon's tricks or strength will beat Levin. Some of the strongest top rollers in the world don't train their riser directly. Some do. It's a matter of different training philosophies. Training back pressure with a belt like Irakli and Levin do, especially with the high weights that they are using, puts a lot of stress on radial deviation. I think that's why they don't need any other riser lift variation. Devon's pronator muscle, along with his comparatively short brachioradialis high insert, is doing more than the whole of his wrist flexors and his forearms, which are fucking massive. Rising might be the least important arm wrestling fundamental compared to cup and roll, but if you've matched someone everywhere else, it can definitely move a match in your favor. You can have a viable style with almost any single component missing, though. For example, Michael Todd for a long time has had minimal ability to cup his wrist in, so he's been all in on rise and roll, and it's worked really well given his limitations. Devon used to train riser dynamically, now he trains it with singles, statics. You should definitely get strong in static pronation, since that's specific to the sport. In a match you're rarely going to try, or be able to, riser out of a lost riser position. But taking a muscle through a full range of motion is better for hypertrophy than isometric, and over the long-term muscle size is what determines your strength potential. Your isometric will get stronger doing full range, and your muscle can still grow from isometric, so either approach will work, but both should work better. Against a random person with no skills, being dominant in just one of those three fundamentals will put you at a mega advantage, assuming you're even somewhat close in strength overall. However, if they're way stronger than you and can just internally rotate you to the pad, then it won't be enough. Devon went through phases where he thought that training grip is stupid, yet now he believes that it's very important. He also thought that lightweight and high volume is a smart way to train for power, but now he trains 1 rep max effort lifts constantly.